Okay, so I knew that this would upset some people, especially certain people. Um, let's talk about this because I think this is an important distinction to make. So there is a difference between getting dressed up in a way that you enjoy and feeling sexy, and specifically trying to put yourself together in a way that is reflective of the type of woman you're trying to have sex with or interested in having sex with. And I'm not taking a experience and turning it into a rule. I'm taking several experiences that I've had. I don't know how out you've been, Charlie Quinn. Ooh, that rhymed. But I'm 33 years old. I transitioned at 15. I started my medical transition at 19. I've had a lot of experiences with this, especially when I was younger and trying to date, and I was a little bit less open-minded with the types of men that I wanted to date. So like I point this out because it's my experience, right? So like when I was younger and I was specifically looking for this sort of hyper masculine heterosexual man that would validate me, it was so common for me to then discover that they were cross-dressers. And these men, and this is the important thing to point out, these men often have complaints about the way that cis women put themselves together, right? And the common standard that they have, the common conversation that they have is like, women have lost their femininity. Women are no longer feminine in a way that they used to be. That is like a very common thing that I've heard these men say to me. And usually they say it, and to be clear, I have not had an experience like this in a very long time. And they would say it to me, and when you're younger and you're still figuring out who you are and you're validating yourself through relationships with men, something like that, it sounds really validating. You don't immediately catch the misogyny in it. And what I'm pointing out is their complaint of women are no longer feminine these days often materializes in they themselves privately and secretly trying to embody the standard that they believe women no longer have. And if you ever find one of these cross-dressers, and I'll be clear, not all cross-dressers are like, misogynist and da-da-da-da-da, but quite frequently when you find these cross-dresser pages, you will notice that the type of femininity that they express is very outdated. And when I say outdated, it's like no one dresses like that anymore. Like it's like a lot of times when I've found crossdressers pages, a lot of it's like they're dressing like a woman would dress like 40 years ago. Like a hypersexualized woman, a woman dressing, frankly, for the male gaze would dress, right? It's just this often very outdated thing, and you can tell that they are getting turned on by taking these pictures, especially because a lot of these pictures, if you look at them, you can tell I've researched this a bit too much. They quite literally are replicating the same porn poses, right? They're replicating the same sort of like Playboy poses from that era kind of thing, right? And it becomes this entire thing where there's this entire culture of especially cross-dressers online who take photos that turn themselves on and also share those photos with other cross-dressers, right? And the thing is, they often have a far more extensive portfolio of themselves cross-dressed in these sort of hypersexualized poses and such than they do as men, right? But these are people who very solidly do not identify as women. They very solidly do not want to transition. They very solidly identify as men, and their cross-dressing is very sort of heterosexually influenced, right? So I've known so many of these dudes who, if you were to talk to them in their man form, they don't have sex with men. They have no attraction to men. They have no interest in being with men. They don't want anything to do with a man, right? You talk to them in their cross-dress form, and they enjoy nothing more than being sexually degraded by a man, right? And these are people who, if you were to ask them if they were attracted to men, if they were gay, if they were bi or whatever, in their man-sona, that's a fun phrase. They quite literally would say no. And you can tell that the only reason they put these clothes on, the only reason they have this sort of hobby of cross-dressing and, doing this whole thing is because they believe that femininity is degrading, right? Because it's never like, oh, I'm wearing a nice dress, oh, I'm even it's never even, oh, I just really like the way that this looks on me, or maybe this lingerie set is cute or whatever. It's always, I'm being sexually degraded. I'm dressed like this because I'm a sissy. I'm dressed like this because I'm a slut. Please degrade me, right? And with these particular types of men, it is a very harsh division. They don't want anyone to know. They're not at all interested in it being known that they do this. It is very much, and that's part of the fetish for them too. They get off on the fact that it's a secret. Some of these men will steal their girlfriend's clothing to go and meet up with men anonymously for sex where they are degraded. I've known far too many people like that. And for context, I'll just give you insight into how I know some of this. When I was younger, I used to participate in, a swing scene that included cross-dressers, and I ended up befriending a fair amount of them. And I would always sort of deal with this thing where, they would try to pursue me as men at some point, and then I would have to like piece the pieces together and realize, oh, these are the same people, right? And the difference between them cross-dressed versus not is so distinct. It is very, very, very distinct. And it's a fascinating thing to sort of observe, right? So I know that this person probably doesn't understand this, but of course my last point was a joke, right? I said, if I see a white conservative man, who's openly and loudly transphobic, I just know that he's a BBC slut, right? And the thing about it is I'm joking, but also I'm not, like that was a joke, but also I'm not, because a lot of these dudes are like, keep in mind, I met most of these types of men when I was living in white conservative areas, right? So there is a commonality there, right? It's obvious if you're a misogynistic man who feels like women have lost their femininity, that like you would probably be more conservative politically, right? I'm trying to say that it goes beyond appreciating your appearance or thinking that you look sexy, and it is like it's a realization of a type of feminine performance that they fetishize, a feminine performance that is frankly often very much informed by the male gaze, right? A lot of them are fetishizing a type of feminine performance that even in and of itself is influenced by men curating an image of femininity for women, right? And this is something that's hard for me to talk about without giving you guys examples. But if you ever happen to see these, you would very quickly get what I'm talking about. You would very quickly get what I'm talking about.